Hello and welcome to the Womb-Centered Healing Podcast. I'm Salma Morningstar and I have Anna-Thea here with me. Thank you so much for joining me. Anna-Thea is going to share with us about womb-centered healing practices, ancient practices that we are reviving and bringing back that become very popular. And without saying any more, mysterious over here, I'm going to let you please introduce yourself, Anna-Thea, and let us know about what womb-centered healing means to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Salman. Thank you for having me and interviewing me. It's just an honor to be here. My name's Anna-Thea, and I'm a divine feminine educator. So I teach online courses for women, really overall about emotions, about communication, and sex ed you didn't learn from your mother. And then the jade egg practices. So womb-centered healing. From 2003 to 2005, I was with the Divine Feminine Institute, and I got my certification as a Divine Feminine educator and spiritual sexual educator. And I learned a practice then that was called the Gnaw. And that sounded kind of odd, but it was nurturing, awakening, and healing. And it was healing all the chakra centers, including the first and second chakra, the base chakra, and the sex center. And having grown up Catholic, right? There was a lot of healing that I went through and a lot of transformation. So how do I answer what is womb-centered healing? For me, what womb-centered healing is the total reverent respect for female anatomy and for the sacredness of our sexual parts. And I actually had an opportunity to experience that through that 2-year journey that I took with the Divine Feminine Institute. And during that time is when I birthed my website, when I wrote a yoni poem. I mean, womb-centered healing is about awakening the creative life force that we hold within ourselves as women. And, we're carrying from our past, from our violent past, rape, pillage, impregnation, abandonment, lives of quiet destitute, right, in our DNA from our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, even our mothers. And so womb-centered healing is peeling away all of those memories that we're holding inside of us, the ancient fears, the ancient wounds, and allowing the womb to be this vital, creative, healing, expressive, sensual energy that is very needed in this world right now.
Indeed. And it sounds like you have had quite a journey with that yourself. What led up to that 2-year training that you did? I'm sure you felt a calling for some reason in your life to return to that divine feminine wisdom.
Yeah. Well, what basically happened was when I was 39 years old, my first husband passed away from liver cancer. He went from alive to gone in 3 months. And after he passed away, and that was really a beautiful marriage. We were married for 11 years. Of course, it had challenges, but he was really, that was a marriage where I could really be me. It was a beautiful, on many, many levels, a very beautiful marriage. And it just changes your life. But after that, then 2 years later, I fell in love with another man that was, quote unquote, he told me when I got involved with him that he was a porn addict or a sex addict. And I thought, I had no idea what that actually meant. And I fell madly in love with him. And, that relationship lasted maybe 3 years. And by the end of that relationship, the pain of him wanting pornography over intimacy with me, and it brought up a lot of my own sexual issues or intimacy issues, and just the challenges that we had and the love that we had for each other. Yet there was really no way of really finding connection. I said, after that ended, I was like, I need to look at my own sexuality. And that's when I went and did the 2-year certification program. But it's interesting because he later took his life.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of it had to do with his suffering with his porn addictions. And he called me, this is years later, he called me about 2 to 3 weeks before he actually took his life. He was suicidal, and we talked. So it was really heart-wrenching to have to go through that with him. So he had a big, huge imprint in my life. And just yesterday, I went to a yoga class, and I love doing yoga. I'm an avid yogini. I've taught yoga for many years. And there was a man in the yoga class that came in with a t-shirt on that said, "Porn kills love."
Mm.
And I started doing yoga, and I was like in my downward dog, and I was breathing. And the whole time I was just like, I had probably 20 Facebook lives inside of me that were just being birthed out through me with this whole concept of, wow, porn kills love. And I had the true experience of that. And that's what drew me to this work, was to put light and love and sacredness back to sexuality. Because that's where I resonate the best at. And that's where I shine, is when my sexuality can be experienced in a very heart-centered, expansive way.
And how have you explored that? I know you were getting ready to, you wanted to share with us about some jade or crystal egg practices that you teach about, and I'm imagining from other conversations I've had and from other practices I've learned that these practices that you're going to share about are very helpful in cultivating that for ourselves as women, cultivating what you just described of this reverence for an appreciation for our own sexual creative energy, and that healing process that we discussed earlier of peeling back the layers of held, unresolved feelings and traumas and pain that we might be holding in that space, and peeling back those layers and coming into our full vibrance and creative beauty and reverence for our femininity and our sexuality. And so I'd love to hear about your journey with that. How did you discover the jade eggs in the
Yes.
in that training?
Yes. So there were some, the teachings the education that I got during that time period are things that I have taught ever since and have just made a huge impact. And it's about communication, how I've worked with my emotions and my sexuality, and then the jade egg, or I call it the yoni egg practice, because I've used jade, I've used obsidian, and I've used other stones too, and then rose quartz. I love my rose quartz egg. But I think really especially with the yoni egg practice, what it has been for me is a journey back home, is a journey of learning how to, and it's a beautiful practice. The yoni egg is a beautiful tool to help you get connected to your body. I mean, it's clear on the other side of your head, and most of us live up in our heads, correct? Mm-hmm. And so to work with the yoni egg, we're bringing all of our mental focus down to the opposite part of our body. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was about, I learned the practices from Saida Desolé. So she was my teacher in the Divine Feminine she was one of 4 teachers at the Divine Feminine Institute. And so it was a cross between Tantra and Taoist practices. Mm-hmm. And then I learned about sexual reflexology. So the different areas of the female anatomy and even the male anatomy, and how they're related to the different emotions and then the different organs. Mm-hmm. So for example, the opening of the vagina is directly related to the color blue, the organ kidneys, and the emotion fear. Mm-hmm. So when a woman is being entered, immediately that area, and trust, the opposite of fear is trust. Mm-hmm. And so it's very interesting, the sexual reflexology and being aware of that. And so when I started working with the egg, and I'll just show you, here's one of the eggs right here. Mm-hmm. And here's a jade one, and here is a obsidian one. Mm-hmm. But when you start bringing in a source of divine light and healing and crystalline energy into a place that inherently is held, lack of trust, trespass, and you allow these tissues to absorb love and radiant energy, divine energy, then things start waking up, things start moving, things start happening. And that's what basically what I experienced intensely during the 2 years, and then ongoing. I think my biggest challenge probably was to find a partner that understood the depth of sacredness that I wanted to hold in the realm of sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. And so the stones, these crystalline stones, they hold an energy that is very healing. And of course, I'm hoping and I'm imagining that you learned practices to ensure that those stones were, I mean, they're living beings, and that those stones are well nourished and cleansed and cared for so that they can continue to be healing allies on this journey.
To be of service, I guess you could say, kind of, yeah.
Right, and friends, it's very intimate friendship that we get to have with those stones, those jade eggs, and other stones that we use for body healing, for a healing process, or that we relate to and relate with healing. I also use or relate with a lot of plants in that intimate way as well. So that's another realm where we can, cultivate this sacred relationship and receive healing energy. And I do a lot of vaginal steaming. That's my training and background. And so the steaming with the herbs does a very similar thing that you're describing with the eggs, of introducing a different energy into an area and bringing healing to the womb, the vaginal opening, and all of those points that you're talking about, just through a different method. Instead of using the earthy stone energy, we're inviting the watery, fiery plant energy.
Medicinal.
Yeah, very medicinal. But I wanted to ask you too then about this sacred, then, it's one thing to like work with a stone or work with plants. And I was just talking with a girlfriend today that she says, it was so good to be together with a human being and feel like we could have this quality of relationship that we don't always get with other human beings, the quality of relating that we want. It's a lot easier to get that quality of relationship with a stone or a plant, funny enough, than it is to get that quality of relationship with another human being, because we are all carrying around so much wounding and so many unhealthy communication and relational patterns. And so, and we weren't trained, and particularly, nobody was trained. Men weren't trained, women were not trained to have healthy sexuality, in these past millennia. We've been taught that sex is a source of shame, and to keep it secret and hidden, and certainly not develop our abilities and feelings there. And so we're all recovering from this. And so what I heard you sharing is that you have had a hard time finding a partner that wanted to explore or had the skills to explore sexuality with the same level of sacredness and care that you learned. And I would love to hear more about your exploration of that, and what are some of the ways that you would like to see that occur that you haven't necessarily seen occur.
Yeah, and it's even that I need.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even that I want, it's that my being needs. Yeah. So having gone through this process of that, having given many healings, having received many full body healings, it's almost as if though I stripped away all of these, this armor that I had, that most of us very confidently walk around in our society, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I jokingly say, I spent tens of thousands of dollars to release all this armor. Now my heart is vulnerable and open, And I've even had healers say that there's a shield that most people have that I don't have, and that I'm like a sponge. And, it is what it is. That is who I am. And this is a big part of my teaching. So, yes, I have needs, and I have a lot of needs, and I don't know how else to do it, but I'm very available, and I'm very sensitive to people's wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm can be very aware and present with holding space for people's pain.
Mm-hmm.
Because for whatever reason, I'm very connected to that level of awareness that we are all holding a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a big part of my teachings are, and I don't even know how to put words to it, Selma, is just holding a space for a better world. And it's not that I miss perfect consciousness by any means. It's that okay, I'll give you an example. When I teach my Manifesting More Pleasure class, the last time I taught it, the biggest thing that came up was sexual duty.
Mm-hmm.
And these are younger women too, how they're having sex because they think they need to, not because they want to. And often it's painful, and they just want to get it over. And I'm not saying in every situation, and I'm not saying that women don't enjoy sex, but I was shocked, and it hurt my heart to hear these younger women saying the biggest issue for them was having to deal with sexual duty. So it made me realize that what women are faced with is an onslaught of energy, sexual energy that's coming at them. And so they're being gobbled up and not able to come to the surface with their own sexuality. So it was really good training for me. I lived 19 years in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I got to actually see this other version of sexuality that is the complete opposite of what I stand for.
Mm-hmm.
The objectification of the female body. And so I think for me, it's really strong in my heart to help women. And the only way that we can survive this onslaught of all this sexual projection that's coming at us is to learn our own sexuality, to define our own sexuality, to get connected to our body. That's why the jade egg practice or the yoni egg practice is a tool, is a helper in that journey for a woman, so that we can literally stand in our own sexuality and say, this is what I need.
And that can be such a challenge to even communicate that when there's all of these unspoken rules and belief systems about, for example, sexual duty, and how we're sort of secretly programmed to be. I mean, it's not even explicit, and it's so hidden, it's even hidden to ourselves about the rules that we're living by around our sexuality, where sexual duty would even exist and even feel like really important to uphold for fear of losing all kinds of things.
Security, losing acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, my body is unable to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is faking orgasms. And, I did a talk once where I was talking and getting going. And at one point I just had everyone say, okay, raise your right hand. And then I had every woman repeat after me, I will never again fake an orgasm. I had them repeat after me. Mm-hmm. But there's a tremendous amount of pressure on a woman. There's pressure on men to perform as well. Mm-hmm. But I think that we as women, we're the leaders of love. And so the way that we lead with love is by really reclaiming our bodies as sacred. As a matter of fact, that's the title of my book, is Empower Yourself by Loving Your Body, The Woman's Guide to Reclaiming Yourself as Sacred. And and it's not an us and it's not a us against them type of thing. It's nothing to do with that. It's that I had a man tell me, he said, it was really beautiful to hear this from a man. He said, the sole purpose of a man is to penetrate a woman in such a way to awaken her full potential. And he said, that's the sole purpose of a man. You know, that's all. And I was like, well, this is interesting. I love that perspective, you know? So, you know, we do need each other. Men and women need each other. And I think what I'm a true believer in, or a promoter for, is that we have yonis, which is translated sacred space. You know, we claim our space as sacred, and we hold strong to that in a very loving way. And that then we will attract in and help our men to have what I call lingams, which is wands of light, you know, magical, mystical healing devices. And so even with the sexual practice that I learned, we can do that sexual practice on our men and helping him raise his sexual energy up to his heart. Because unfortunately, and I was thinking about it just yesterday a lot, because of this whole idea that porn kills love, you know, and then I started thinking of other words. Porn suffocates love. Porn destroys love. And I'm not trying to judge porn, because I am not that exposed to porn. I've just been exposed to the effect of my lover using porn and how it personally affected me. But from what I can tell, it's typically the degradation of, you know, the womb, of the female essence, of the divine feminine.
Yeah, that's a big topic right now, and especially since pornography is often the initiation that young men get about sexuality. And, you know, I feel very strongly that we need to change that if we're ever going to be free of the what's going on for us sexually, where the womb is not revered, and that foundation of our whole relational model is just so unhealthy, that these healing practices, these ancient healing practices that remind us of the sacredness and that help us to cultivate that sacredness, are becoming so popular and so important, because we really, I feel, we all feel that hunger for something more, that it's just not satisfying for anyone.
Exactly. Well, you know, our genitals hold consciousness. And so these ancient practices, such as the yoni egg or the jade egg, help to shift the level of consciousness that we're holding in our genitals, basically. You know, because you're putting light or crystal in a place that has typically, for generations and generations, held shame.
Yeah. And those crystals also, you were talking about the yoni absorbing the energy of the crystals, but my understanding, especially with like the obsidian egg, is that the crystals can also absorb certain energies from the yoni. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd like to share my own personal story. So, how do I say it? You know, I do astrology. I'm a queen of hearts. I do the destiny cards, the love cards. I'm a queen of hearts, which is about sensuality, romance, love, all that stuff. So I've had my fair share of romance and love, and I've been through the ringer. You know, that's why I teach these things, right? Because I have this idealistic view that we're supposed to all really love each other. Right?
Right.
But I've had, in the process, a rude awakening, right? So, I have two past lovers that are no longer even alive, and I had one lover that left me for another woman, and I have another lover that dumped me, and then my father suddenly died 30 days later. So, you know, I've had my fair share of love wounds, so to speak, right? And hooks. So I've personally experienced the depth of when you bring somebody into your body, you actually get their psychological imprint. And it's very hard to let go and release them out of your heart afterwards. You know, so they stay, they're always going to stay with you. But the dysfunctional hooks, the things that limit you, the things that hold you back from keeping your heart open. And so even most recently, I ended up getting an obsidian egg because I was like, okay, now it's time to really, really do a lot of my forgiveness work and really let go of these past experiences that I'm carrying. So I did ceremony with myself. And when I put the egg in, I loved putting it in at night and sleeping with it, doing my practices, and then sleeping with it inside of me. And I asked with intention that it take the psychological hooks. So anytime you have sex with someone, you are going to get their psychological imprint in you. Because yonis, what are yonis? They're the innies we absorb, you know. And so I asked this beautiful obsidian egg to take that imprint out. And then when I woke up in the morning, before I was going to release the egg out, I stayed there and laid there with my hands on my womb and using my imagine and using invocation and calling in sacred energy. I just imagined these hooks going into the obsidian egg, just absorbing, and it felt so good. And then when I released the egg a little while later, I also visualized all of those hooks just coming right out of me. And then I placed the obsidian egg in salt water with intention again for all of those hooks to be released so that I could use the egg again.
Powerful.
It was really, really powerful.
And then what kind of changes did you notice in your emotional well-being? And I mean, how were those hooks affecting you before? And did you notice that had stopped?
Freedom, rumination, mental rumination of a past lover.
Uh-huh.
You know, and I think every woman can relate to that. Men can relate to that too. You continue to think about somebody and they keep on popping up in your mind to the point where it gets in the way. It's not serving you. Having to let go of past lovers. And you know, just the burden, the energetic burden of that imprint was I'd say the mental rumination, it was the key thing, or the mental, I wouldn't call it obsession, it was just too much, it was occupying too much of my gray matter. You know, I want to encourage all the listeners to read the book by Naomi Wolf, Vagina, because there's a nerve, it's the pelvic nerve that goes directly from the vagina up to the brain. And she even goes as far as to say that rape victims should be considered having brain damage. So what happens down below has a direct effect on our confidence and our ability to think straight. And when she hasn't been honored and loved, it affects who we are. And as a standard in our society, she is now still not honored and loved.
And it sounds like these practices that we are sharing about, the jade egg practices, the ceremonial aspect of it, and there's lots of other practices that we share about in the Womb-Centered Healing Temple. And that many teachers are sharing more about in feminine mystery schools like the one that you went to. We're reclaiming that. We're reclaiming our right, a birthright, to be honored and loved in our sexuality, and shifting that standard, hoping to, my vision is that, and I know there are many who share this vision, is that, you know, in a very small number of generations, we will have shifted that standard. And I feel that it's necessary for that standard to shift in order for us to survive, because we are degrading and diminishing the very source of new life when we don't honor and nourish and revere the womb. And that our ability to do that and still have life be sustained on this planet is running out.
Right. So, I mean, have any of us ever thought about what was happening when you were conceived? You know, conscious conception.
Yeah.
You know, actually co-creating a new life form. And we as women, it's a vibrational thing. You know, like I said, our yonis carry, our genitals, both men and women, carry a certain consciousness. And as we raise the consciousness and the frequency of our female anatomy, then things will start shifting. We're the epicenter. The womb is the epicenter of the new life.
Exactly. And that means all the different ways that we create new life, not simply childbirth or child rearing. There's all different ways that we create new life within ourselves, with each other. And every time we make love, even if we're not conceiving a child, we're creating new life in some way. And that's where conscious sexuality and magical sexuality, spiritual sexuality starts to play. Is let's pay attention to that and nourish our ability to create new life in all these new ways that we have the capacity to. And so we do have that capacity. So these practices, like the jade egg practices, are tools along the way, of beautiful tools along the way. And I really appreciate you sharing your experience with that and coming on the podcast. And is there a place that someone could get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your jade egg practices?
Yes, I offer a free jade egg class that leads into another class that goes into the deeper practices. So, and it's interesting because you mentioned that, you know, the mystery school. My online course is kind of like a mystery school also, but it's all online. So you can you can go to Anna-Thea.org. So it's ANNATHEA.org. And there you can find my courses. You'll find the free jade egg class, and then the other courses about communication, emotions, sex education, even how to do a healing on your man. So there's a wealth of wisdom and education that, you know, I offer from my website, and lots of blogs.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Womb-Centered Healing podcast. And it's been a delight to share with you. And for listeners who are wanting to learn more about the Womb-Centered Healing Temple, you can go to wombcenteredhealing.com and learn about upcoming events and courses that will be available as well. And if you want to not miss any of these podcast episodes, you can go there, wombcenteredhealing.com, and sign up for the newsletter, and you'll be notified when these podcasts come out. All right. Take good care. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time.